It's a crazy week here in college football. The latest news: Dashaun Womack, former five-star and defensive end who's been in Baton Rouge for 2 years, has entered his name. Well, he hasn't entered the transfer portal. He's declared that he's going to enter the transfer portal when that opens up, coming up in a week. So let's talk about that with Glen West. Go 24/7 covers LSU on the field and in recruiting. Joins us every Tuesday on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Glenn, how we doing?
Ugh, I'm just trying to keep up, Hunt. I'm just like you, just like everybody else that covers this team. Just trying to keep up. So, yeah, another tough loss there for LSU to watch Womack enter the transfer portal.
Well, let's just talk about some of this stuff that we've seen today. The two names that we've seen into the transfer portal that I can think of, C.J. Daniels and Dashaun Womack. Maybe there are others. But start with those two, and are those surprising? How big of losses are those for LSU moving into 2025?
Yeah, I would say certainly starting off with CJ, that is a loss. I mean, you listen to Brian Kelly literally 8 days ago say, how happy they are with him and just what he's been able to play through this year and how impactful he's been in the locker room. And here we are 8 days later, and talking about all the indications were that he was going to be back for this team in 2025, and he's expected to enter the transfer portal. So all of a sudden this wide receiver room is just emptying by the day here. I mean, you talk about some of the players that they're going to be losing to the draft, whether it's Kyron Lacy, some of the guys they could be losing due to eligibility. So like and then obviously now with the transfer portal with CJ Daniels and Landon Ibieta, those are two of the four that have entered or have gone official so far. You're looking at this roster, you're looking at this room, and you're like, okay, what's left? I mean, you've got Aaron Anderson and you've got Xavion Thomas as kind of the two primary guys that played a lot of football for you last year in that room, or I should say in 2024 in that room. So I'm looking around and I'm saying they've got to hit the transfer portal hard. They've got to go get a wide receiver one, and then they probably also got to go get another impact wide receiver out of the portal. I think they now need at least two guys here on December 9th when this thing opens up for them to be really aggressive with and go add to this receiver room to help, whether it's Garrett Nussmeier that comes back or whoever is the quarterback next year. Because right now they just do not have the guys. They have some promising young talent. They have some guys coming in, whether it's Philip Wright or for the moment, Derek Meadows. I'm not sure that people really expect Meadows to hang around, but we're certainly in an era here where LSU has to go hit on a couple of portal wide receivers, and I think we're at the point also where LSU's got to put its money where its mouth is. Like they've lost too many guys here now to where you can realistically say like, okay, this thing looks great right now. This looks like we're in a really strong position. They have to go out and they have to go add some really high caliber players at a number of positions, and that includes wide receiver. It now includes edge rusher. Certainly, I think you'd like to see them add some O linemen as well. So a lot of work to be done here over the next 4 weeks to kind of make this roster a more competitive one in 2025.
The guys in front of Womack had pretty good years. Savion Jones and
Yeah.
Braden Swinson played very well, and Dashaun Womack didn't play very much. He had 2.5 sacks in his career at LSU. How big a loss do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a loss because you're looking at the future here, and those guys kind of being out of eligibility and moving on. You figured a guy like Womack would be the successor and would start the next 1 or 2 years in that position. So certainly a loss there with Womack. He obviously is a guy with a lot of talent. Was somebody that I think was still working through stuff off the field to kind of get to a place where he could see the field a little bit more. But he's very talented. He's a big guy, and every time he did see the field, I think he made his presence felt for the most part. But he just didn't see the field all that often because you couldn't really justify taking Braden Swinson off the field to put Sean Womack on the field. So it's going to be very interesting to see kind of where LSU goes from here. I know things seem dark and bleak right now because this is kind of the time where everybody's leaving, and it's like, what's the plan? How are they going to go out and they're going to address these things? I will say, like, I think we need to hold off total judgment until kind of this month finishes out and
Yeah.
just kind of see who they bring in, who they have to replace those guys. I'm looking at the current roster right now. Gabe Relaford makes a ton of sense as a guy that needs to be developed and stick around and be a potential starter next year at one of those edge position players. But they certainly have to go add, at least one or two more guys now on the edge, in addition to what you have to go get at receiver, at running back, at cornerback, at safety. I mean, there's a lot of positions right now that I think LSU is going to need to attack in the portal. And we'll see if they can be as aggressive as Brian Kelly seems to think they will be.
Do you think Brian Kelly's philosophy on program and roster building has changed over the last 2 months? Because, I mean, he
I
talked routinely about how we're going to do this from the high school ranks.
Yeah, I don't know how it can't, and or how it. I mean, just by what they've lost here over the last couple weeks. I mean, not even just the last couple months, but just the last couple weeks here. You've watched the number one quarterback leave your class. You've watched, now a top five cornerback and at two positions of need that you need for this future of this roster. They've gone and taken some money from other programs. We could certainly see some more movement here over the next 24 hours with more guys potentially leaving, guys that you're hoping can stick around in this class. So I do. I think that they've had to maybe have some of those tough conversations the last couple of weeks about how they want to approach this thing, and it's going to be interesting what they decide. I mean, like they don't have a lot of avenues right now to improve from a freshman class standpoint. There's Solomon Thomas, the offensive lineman, who's out there. You've got Jakeem Stewart, the defensive lineman out of St. Aug, or I should say Carr. But those are kind of the big two that I think are left from a freshman perspective, and they would fill positions of need for sure. But you've got to go out and you've got to get some veteran experience talent that's played at the Power Five level. And I think Brian Kelly's been hesitant to pour all those resources into that angle of this, but when you're pouring all your resources for an entire year, bringing Cade Phillips and Bryce Underwood to campus 8, 9, 10 times, and then the 11th hour to see those guys go to different programs, it's got to be crushing. I mean, it's really got to be a huge, huge blow to what you're trying to build here. So I think they have to have a little bit of that mind shift change here where it's got to be a free agency and you've got to go out and you've got to go get guys on a 1 year, 2 year rental and try to compete year in, year out in that kind of structure.
What did you think when Brian Kelly said that there are going to be some impact guys that are going to announce that they're coming back to LSU? What did that trigger in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some cases that can be made now. Certainly, some money is freeing up here as guys kind of leave the program for you to maybe make some of that retention cases a little bit stronger. I know that there's conversations going on right now with Emory Jones about maybe possibly getting him back. I think that would be a huge addition. Certainly, Garrett Nussmeier is a guy that we've talked about. You have to get back. I mean, like I don't know if there's a really great option out there, even if you go in the portal and say that like this quarterback's definitely better than Garrett Nussmeier. Like I think that they need him back and they need a year of development from him to really be a complete offense next year. And then the other one's Mason Taylor. I mean, I think that's kind of reaching for the fences a little bit there with Mason, but if you can put together a compelling enough offer to bring him back for a senior season, he was the guy that Nussmeier leaned on in pretty much every reliable circumstance this year. It was him and Aaron Anderson that he really looked to on those third downs, those fourth downs, every time they needed a big conversion. So if you're able to convert or get Mason Taylor back in the fold, that's extra gravy on top there for retention standpoint. But those are kind of the three that stick out to me right now. I'm sure if we kind of dive into this further a little bit down the line, there might be a couple other guys that rise to the surface in terms of retention. But those are kind of the three main impact guys that I think come to mind from an offensive perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking Harold Perkins. I was thinking
Sure. Yeah.
potentially Chris Hilton, who has another
Yeah.
year, and I mean, there are others, and you just kind of figure out what those guys' plans are. The only thing that the most difficult part when I consider this from the outside, because I don't know what the conversations are like. You just have to hope, if you are a coach, that at least high schoolers and players in your team are being truthful with you. And if they are and they make a decision, you can react to that. But if you get caught off guard, which I'm assuming happens sometimes, like that's tough to recover from because you can only take someone on their word. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, like the thing that Brian Kelly was talking about with CJ Daniels 8 days ago. I don't know what's changed there over the last 8 days, but it seems like that was a pretty reverse course there of thinking in terms of what's gone on the last week plus. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious to hear like what's your thoughts on like the transfer, like the freshmen and the transfers and all that stuff. I'm sure you've gotten into it a little bit with your show here, but just like it's got to be so crushing when you recruit a guy for over a year as a high schooler, and then at the 11th hour for you to lose him because of something that's out of your control in terms of just other programs paying them more money. Like I think it has to kind of alter your line of thinking of how you build rosters going forward. Correct?
Yeah, I mean it's year to year. I mean it's just a 1 year.
Sure.
Just because you get a high school player, well, we got him locked in for 3 years. No, you got him in for a fall. You've got him in for 4 months. So that's what you've got to consider there. And so you got to allocate money, and everybody's got a different amount of resources. One of the things I talked about yesterday, I have a hard time really jumping all over LSU's coaching staff if you're getting commitments from players and then they leave for money and you're not allowed. Like, if you want to blame the ownership of the Yankees for not signing Juan Soto, well, it's their money. It's not Brian Kelly's money. Like, he can only offer what is available to him. So it's hard for me to get on the coach or the staff when guys decommit and go elsewhere, because there's very little he can do to control that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a relationship business until somebody throws a big pile of money at a player that they just can't say no to. So, I mean, like it's getting to a point here where, rev sharing can't get here soon enough, but at the same time, what's to keep, this from still happening even when rev sharing does get here? Like I've always looked at rev sharing as like a thing that will help with player retention. It'll help maybe with some portal guys, but for those freshmen and for those high school recruits that you're trying to get in here, there's nothing that can stop an outside endorsement or a donor to come out and throw a big pile of money at a player and tell them that it's a piece of the future kind of thing here, where you can come in and be marketable as a player. So it's very, very different times we're living in here, and these next 24 hours, 48 hours for sure are going to be really interesting to see how this 2025 class plays out.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.